Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am really excited for today's video because I have been prepping this video for a really long time. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the 31-day palette challenge that I gave myself throughout the month of May. Basically, I challenged myself to use a different eyeshadow palette from my collection every single day for the entire month of May. And it was actually super fun. So I'm also doing a 19 eyeshadows in 2019, which is basically like a version of the Pan Those eyeshadows. And I feel like if I wasn't doing, like, if I didn't toss these like challenges in, then I would get really bored with the palettes. I definitely want to switch up the way that I'm doing that specific challenge next year so that I'm rotating through my collection a little bit more. So this is just my way of rotating through my collection. I also did this in February, and in February I randomly selected all palettes that I used throughout the month. This time around, however, I just chose the palettes that I felt like working on, felt like using. I allowed myself to choose palettes that I was working on in my 19 shadows in 2019 project, and I also allowed myself to use more than one palette for a look. So in February I just chose a palette and I only used that palette for the looks that I was creating. However, this time around I chose a palette, but I also allowed myself to pull other palettes into the look if I wanted to. So I hope all that makes sense. And if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts on the 31 palettes that I used throughout the month of May, as well as seeing the looks that I created, then stay tuned. But first, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider doing so before you go. I post videos every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay guys, I'm gonna scoot over because I did take a picture of each look that I created this time around. So I'll post it right here. Now please keep in mind, I am not even close to a makeup artist. I would say my eyeshadow skills are like beginner, like trying to reach intermediate, but definitely not there yet. I've gotten better at blending throughout the course of this year, but still nowhere near like not expert, not like advanced. So please bear that in mind when you see my eyeshadow looks. They're not going to be these like extravagant looks. In fact, you'll see some of the looks that I created, I literally used one shadow. Also, I do work 5 days out of the week, so a lot of these looks had to be like work appropriate looks, and I was like flying out the door, so like I had to like get my picture really quick and then like get out the door. So they're not like the highest quality pictures either, but I wanted you guys to see how I use the eyeshadow palettes. I want to begin this video by talking about some of the looks that I created that I didn't like. So we're going to start with, if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my like album in my phone so I can talk about each of the palettes and remember. So starting with a palette that I decided to declutter because it made me so mad to use. This is I used the Viseart Warm Neutral palette, and I actually like looking at the look, I liked the look I created, but it was so frustrating to create this look, and I actually ended up pulling in a shimmery shadow from another palette. I think I ended up using, trying to remember, maybe a shadow out of the Tartelette in Bloom palette all over the lid, because I just did not like the way that the eyeshadow looked without the shimmer. I find that you have to build up the Viseart eyeshadows quite a bit. I also didn't like the Viseart Petite Pro, and actually I ended up decluttering this as well as my Viseart Petite Pro this past month. I'll kind of talk to you guys about, I've decluttered some eyeshadows over the course of the last month, and I'll mention them to you right now. I also want to post a video about the eyeshadow palettes that I've recently decluttered, so keep an eye out for that. But even though I like the way that the final look turned out for this, it was so incredibly frustrating to create this that I immediately decided I couldn't have this palette in my collection anymore. I never reached for it because I knew when I did, I got frustrated. I only ended up using this palette probably like 4 or 5 times throughout its life with me, and it was an $80 eyeshadow palette. So I definitely feel like that was a complete waste of money. For some reason, I just cannot get the Viseart shadows to work for me. I feel like they're kind of a polarizing palette. I've heard quite a few people not like them, but then there's so many people who are diehard over the Viseart palettes. For me, I don't think they're worth $80, and I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending them. So this wasn't my least favorite look that I created this month, but this was definitely my least favorite palette to use this month. I forgot to mention too, I'm not going to go in the order that like, I'm not going to go like the first of the month through the 31st, like in the order that I created these looks. I'm just gonna kind of chat through like my least favorites and then we'll maybe go in order. But the look that I hated the most was the one that I created with the Too Faced chocolate bar palette, and I'm gonna declutter this too. I'm just gonna give this one to my daughter because she's played with it already. If you can't tell, there's quite a few little nail marks in this. When she was like 1.5 or 2, she ended up getting into this, and I feel like the chocolate bar palettes were good back in the day when the eyeshadow market, or like the eyeshadow market wasn't incredibly saturated like it is now. But there's just so many options now, and so many good options, that I never wanted to reach for this. I know a lot of people really do like this too, and I could see why people would like this palette, but for me, there's so many more eyeshadows in my, or eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I'd rather reach for over this, that I just want to get rid of this. It almost, like when I look at it, I don't get excited. Like I just want to get rid of anything in my collection that like is an eyesore to me, and this was just because I knew it was just sitting there, because there was that part of me that just couldn't declutter it, but I also didn't really want to keep it. So it's like frustrating to look at. So for the third and fourth look that I'm going to talk to you guys about, I ended up using both of the Violet Voss palettes that I have in my collection, just because I feel like I haven't given these enough love. And what I have to say is I'm not overly impressed with the Violet Voss formula. So first we have the Like a Boss palette, and I thought I was going to love this. I like that this one, I feel like, gives more variety in color range than any of the other Violet Voss palettes that I've seen. However, I feel like the shimmers in the Violet Voss palettes are a little bit lackluster, and that's where my real problem lies with these. So the look that I created was super neutral. I was going to work, and I ended up going in, I was like really excited to use this Amazeballs shade. And if I remember correctly, it swatches, yeah, it swatches super, super, super beautifully. I just don't feel like it translates that way onto the eyes. The mattes are fine to work with. They're not like the best mattes I've ever used. They're definitely not the worst. I'm gonna hang on to my Violet Voss to both Violet Voss palettes, but they're definitely not my favorite to reach for. So that was the Like a Boss palette. And then I actually did like the look that I created with the Holy Grail palette, which looks like this. As you can tell, this one just doesn't have like the color variety I feel like that this one has. I just feel like you're left with more options in this palette. Now I know this is just like their take on a warm toned palette, their take basically on the modern Renaissance, and I really did want to love this palette, but I was just frustrated with the way that my look, I still enjoy the way my look came out, but it wasn't what I was envisioning. I ended up doing like a pretty smoky sort of a look. I went in with brownie points and then deepened that up with Teddy, and then I went on with glamping all over the eyes, and I thought it was going to be just like a really smoky reddish brown sort of a look. But again, this swatches way better than it translates on the eyes. Now I did use this with a wet brush as well as a dry brush. It obviously works better with a wet brush. I didn't try these with a glitter glue, so I'd be interested to see if I feel like I like them better with a glitter glue, but I don't always want to have to go in with that extra step when I'm creating looks. So again, these aren't favorites of mine, but I will be keeping these. Okay, I feel like of like frustrations and stuff, I've gotten all my frustrations out of the way. I was frustrated in the looks I created with those Violet Voss palettes. Up next, I have the Sweet Peach palette by Too Faced, and I really do like this palette. The look that I created with this palette was just like the basic look that I feel like I've always created with this, but I really like this palette for that. This is an easy one for me to wear on days that I work, because I open this palette and I know exactly what I'm going to do. Again, I usually just do the same thing every time I create a look. I go in with puree all over the lid, then I'll deepen it up with Summer Yum, and then usually I'll go in with Charmed I'm Sure to like really deepen up the outer V, and then I take Luscious all over the lid. I love this Luscious shade. So kind of a basic palette in my eyes, but definitely want to hang on to this guy. This will be the last sort of like chocolate bar-y type of palette that I have in my collection, but I will be keeping this one. Okay, a look I really enjoyed, but I feel like it doesn't translate as well in the picture, was one I created with the Dream Street palette. I feel like I've talked about this palette quite a bit on my channel recently. It's just such a phenomenal palette at such an inexpensive cost for the quality. It is $18, but it's an $18 eyeshadow palette, and I feel like it performs like a high-end palette. Obviously, if you are more of like a cool tone type of gal and you don't dig warm tones, I don't necessarily know that this will be the palette for you, but I really love this palette. I love the beautiful like rose gold shimmers that you have. The shimmers perform so amazingly in this, and then you have like your golden champagne sort of shimmer as well. The look that I ended up creating with this, I actually just went in with this twinkle shade up here and went in with that all over the crease, and then I took this mermaid boy shade, which I am obsessed with at the moment. It's like this aqua shifty shade. I absolutely love it, but I went in with this all over the lid, and that's how I created the look, and I absolutely loved it. I anticipate that I will be wearing this look quite a bit this summer, and I do anticipate I will reach into this palette a lot this summer as well. The Carly Bible palette is a palette that I actually am trying to pan one of the shades in my 19 Shadows in 2019 project, and I hadn't reached into this palette for quite a while, so that's why I decided to pick this as one of my palettes. And I created just your everyday sort of mauve tone look. I went in with this shade that I'm trying to pan all over the lid, used this shade on the end, which I really do enjoy, to deepen up the crease, and then I went in with this purple shimmer shade all over the lid. Super easy look to create. I really do like this palette. I know you can't get it anymore, but I have been enjoying my time with this year. Okay, and then another purple look that I created. I hadn't reached for my Dose of Colors Marvelous Mauves eyeshadow palette in quite some time, so I definitely wanted to pull this in. I ended up using 4 out of the 5 shades in this palette to create the look that I created. I went in with this shade right over here all over the crease to like blow it out. Then I went in with this to deepen it a little bit, went in with this on the outer V to deepen it even more, and then went in with this just slightly to like further deepen it. And then I reached into my Prism palette from ABH to do like a shimmery sort of vibe on the like actual eye on the lid. I'm like, what am I trying to say? I actually really enjoy the way that this eyeshadow look turned out. It's not something that I would clearly wear every day because I'm not wearing purple eyeshadow every day, but if I'm looking for a purple look or a mauve look, this is definitely a palette that I would recommend. I love the Dose of Colors 5-pan eyeshadow palettes, so I was really excited to pull this for this challenge. Okay, I'm trying to keep track here. I think we're on number 10. Another palette that I'm currently trying to pan, actually a couple of shades in this year, is my BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette. I love this palette, you guys. It is such a standout, phenomenal palette. I don't know that you can get this anymore, but it was $18. Comes with a mirror, and the quality of the shadows is just phenomenal. I've gotten quite a bit of use out of this palette this year, but I love this palette, so that's why I wanted to pull this one in and just create my standard go-to look with this. I really like taking this Escape shade, which I'm trying to pan all over my we're blowing this one out in my crease. I'm like, what am I trying to say today? Blowing this one out in the crease, and then I just take Boho, which I'm also trying to pan, and I put that all over the lid, and I just love the way that look turns out. I wear that look probably at least once a week. I feel like I can kind of get away with that one at work too, so I wear that look quite a bit, and I just couldn't help myself. I know I could have challenged myself to use a different palette, but I wanted to use this one. So number 10, we have my Persona Identity palette. I love this palette, you guys, and I always was saying that I really love this palette, but I never remember to reach for it, so I knew I wanted to reach for this guy. I ended up creating a pretty cool toned look for this. I ended up using Charming all over the crease, used Maverick to deepen up the crease, and then I went in with Seductive all over the lid, and I really liked the way that this turned out. I really do like cool tone shades. I was really digging the just like 3 eyeshadows per look kind of vibe this month, just quick and easy. And this is a palette that I like because it provides some warm tones, some cool tones, and the shimmers are just absolutely outstanding in this palette. So if this is one that you've been thinking about, I would highly recommend. I know she's releasing a second palette. I think it comes out this year, and it looks like it's going to have some more color in it, so I'm really excited for that because it is a really high quality palette, and I was definitely glad to reach into this in May. Number 11, I have my Tartelette Toasted palette, and I mentioned mentioned this in a previous video, but I had decluttered this, but it was like sitting in my box of stuff waiting to like either get listed on Poshmark or for me to give to my sister. And I was like, I really didn't give this much of a shot at all when I originally decided to declutter this. So I decided to pull this one back out and give it a whirl. And I actually like the look that I created. I ended up just using Latte in the crease, deepened it with Warmth, and then went in with, I believe, yeah, I went in with Flame all over the eye, which is this beautiful like red shade. And I liked the look. I'm going to keep this palette around for a little bit. The Tartelette and Bloom palette is one of my absolute favorites. So I'm going to keep this at least through the fall time. And if I don't reach for it much in the fall, then I will declutter it again. But for right now, this kind of surprised me. Okay, and then speaking of the Tartelette and Bloom, I couldn't not reach into this month. I love this palette, you guys. I honestly reach into this so often still. This is one that's super easy for me to reach into if I just like need to fly out the door. So I often find myself reaching for this on days that I'm heading to work. For the look that I created, I kind of mixed warm and cool tones. I'm not really sure what I was thinking with this, but I went in with Smarty Pants and Jet Setter, and then I used a shade from the Urban Decay Born to Run palette all over my lid. I don't know, I just wanted to like spice things up and try something different. I don't hate the look that I created. It's definitely not like my favorite. I probably just would have rather done like more of a champagne shade with those cool tone shadows, but just wanted to switch things up and see if I could get anything cool. Not sure I would do that one again, but okay. And then I obviously couldn't have gone a whole month without reaching into some ABH palettes, so I reached into Norvina because I feel like Norvina kind of, she gets left out, she gets forgotten about sometimes. For this look, I ended up using, so the look that I came up with was something completely different than what I had originally envisioned. So I started with Eccentric, all like blown into my crease, yeah, just like blown out everywhere. And then I've gone in with Volatile and tried to like use Passion to create I don't know what I was trying to create, but I didn't like that. So then I ended up using Drama and using that like in the outer V to make that look a little bit darker. And then I used Dazzling and Rose Gold to kind of do this like ombre sort of effect. I don't hate the look that I ended up creating. The picture that I have of this, it honestly just looks like a brown shadow with like a maybe like the shimmery rose gold all over the lid. It looked a little different with my eyes open. I ended up filming with this. I can't remember what videos I filmed. Yeah, this wasn't my favorite look. This palette I find to be a little bit challenging. Every time I reach into this, I end up creating a look that like I didn't originally go into the palette planning to create. I've looked up quite a few like looks on Pinterest and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to create that, and then what I come up with is completely different. I still do really enjoy this palette. I think it's really nice and I love the shimmers in here. This is one I could see myself reaching into just for a shimmer shade. The color story is like a little bit confusing if you're trying to create a whole look from this, at least in my opinion, but I'm still happy to have this in my collection. I just didn't really create the look that I had in mind for myself. Alright, then I also used the Sultry palette and I did something a little bit different for this. So I used, and actually I kind of did the same thing today. I used Twig in the crease, which I also did today, and like smoked this out. And then for this one, I reached into the Alamar Cosmetics palette and used this green shimmer shade, which is Malacon. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I used that green shimmer shade, which is just stunning, all over the lid. I think I may have ended up, nope, I think it was just those two. I literally just used Twig and this green shimmer shade. Loved the look that I created, and I would definitely do that one again. I feel like in the picture it looks like I didn't do the best job blending, but I still liked the look. Definitely gonna have to try that one again, maybe blend it a little bit better. And then I also reached into my Riviera palette. This is one that, again, I feel like doesn't necessarily have like a confusing color story, but for me, who doesn't play around with colors that often, I mean, it's maybe a little bit difficult. So for the Riviera palette, this is another one that the look that I ended up creating was nothing like what I had envisioned. I think I had originally envisioned that I was going to do something like similar to what I did with the Sultry, where I used like that twig shade, but I was going to do something a little bit warmer. And it started with me taking this Estate shade and then going in with this Mediterranean. This is the shade that I wanted to base my look off of. I actually have Mediterranean on my eyes today too. There's Mediterranean. It's just this beautiful like periwinkle color. So I had this like vision in my mind that I was gonna do like a cool tone in the crease with this cool toned shimmer all over the eye. But then I went in with a warm tone in the crease, and then I went in with that, and then I was like, okay, I'm not digging this. So then I ended up putting Coastline in to try and blend things together, and I wasn't loving that. So then I went in with Monte Carlo, and I came up with the look that you'll see pictured, which again, the blending was a little bit of a struggle. So I'm not super thrilled with the look. I definitely want to play with this one some more and see like what I can come up with. This one again is like a little bit difficult for me to like think of things I want to do, but still really glad to have this one in my collection. Just again, not the look that I had originally envisioned for this one. Okay, I think we're on number 16. I of course went in with the Friendcation palette and created a look. I love the Friendcation palette. Now what I will say is I was in a rush this day, and I don't love the way that this look turned out just because I didn't do the best job blending yet again. I ended up using mostly just this shade right here, which is in the shade Girl Bye. I wanted to use more of the pink tones because I've done a lot with the neutral tones in this palette. So I went in with this, and then I went in with this shimmer shade all over the lid, which is in the shade Try Me. Again, I want to play around with this one a little bit more with those pinks just because I was in a rush that day and I ended up not blending the best as per usual. But I do really like this palette and do recommend this palette. I think it's such a unique formula, and the quality of the mattes is outstanding. Seriously, I would have this palette. I would keep this palette around just for like these 3 shades right here because they're so easy to work with and I absolutely love them. Okay, let's talk about the Melt Smoke Sessions palette. This one, when I bought this, I knew this wasn't going to be like an everyday wearable palette. However, this is like, in my opinion, like such a dramatic palette that I'm really struggling to create looks that like me and my skill level can create. I don't mind the look that I ended up coming up with. I actually tried to use this palette, hated the look that I created, wiped it off my eyes, and then started over. And I just feel like for this palette, typically the looks that you're gonna get, you're gonna want like probably bolder lashes. I did add a little bit of a wing to this because I just felt like it needed one. I love the shimmers in this palette. I think that they are outstanding. The mattes, in my opinion, aren't my favorite. I think it could just be that they're deeper shades and harder to work with, but they blend out and look, they're not my favorite is what I'm gonna say. But the mattes or the shimmers are outstanding, and this is one that's just fun to have around. I'm not mad that I have this, but I do think it's a little bit more difficult to work with just because it is like a green palette. The Huda Emerald Obsessions palette is another palette that I currently am trying to pan this shade in my 19 and 2019. So I've been really into greens. Speaking of the Melt Smoke Sessions palette, I've been into greens a lot, and more so like lighter shimmery greens, but greens nonetheless. The look that I created with this palette, I don't hate. Again, I think I could have done a better job blending. I could say that over and over and over again. I ended up using this one to blow out into my crease, and then I actually used the shade that I'm trying to pan to like deepen up the crease a little bit, and then I mixed these 2 shimmers and kind of like created like not an ombre effect, but used it to like do a shimmer all over the lid. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Now, what I will say is this shade right here is like kind of chunky in a sense of like, it's just like a chunky glitter. It's almost like a loose glitter shade. Maybe it is, and I just don't know that. I typically actually enjoy the looks that I create with the Emerald Obsessions palette. Not my favorite of the Obsessions palette, the gemstone line isn't my favorite. I also have the purple one, but I end up usually enjoying the looks that I create with this because I have been enjoying greens lately. Okay, I almost hate to talk about this next one because of the controversy surrounding the brand, but I used this before, we found out about Wet n Wild. This is my mini comfort zone palette. I don't mind the look that I created with this. It's very, very neutral. I ended up wearing this to work. I'm not going to declutter this, but I am going to declutter a couple other little guys that I have. I don't want to just like completely throw away all of my Wet n Wild products. I just won't be supporting the brand anymore. I do like the Comfort Zone palette. It probably is my favorite of all the little ones that I have. I am going to be decluttering. I actually ended up dropping my Not a Basic Peach one, so that one is gone. I am going to declutter this one, which is in Rose in the Air, just because I would reach for my Modern Renaissance over this, so I just don't need this in my collection anymore. This project helped me realize there's certain palettes in my collection that I just don't need anymore. I actually ended up decluttering both of my Kat Von D palettes, my Serpentina as well as my Metal Matte palette as well during the course of May, because I realized that I never reach for those palettes, so why am I keeping them around? So this is another one I'm going to be decluttering, and then I will declutter my nude one. I forget what it's called. At the end of the year. That one is currently in my 19 Shadows in 2019 project, so I'm just going to keep that until I finish that project, but I will declutter that one at that time. Oh gosh, this video is like a million years long. I'm sorry you guys if you're sticking around through all of it. Okay, let's talk about the Alamar Cosmetics palette. The picture you're seeing of this, I ended up wearing this to the gym, and I really just used La Costa, which I'm trying to pan in my 19 Shadows project, all over my lid. Super easy, super quick. I can do this on days that I'm going to work. It's just a pretty shimmer to put on your lid and just go. It just sort of brightens up the eyes, and I really do like it. So that was my quick and easy look out of this palette. I also reached for my Baked Browns palette from Dose of Colors. I love this eyeshadow palette. You truly can't go wrong. If you just need like a neutral, easy to travel with, easy to wear to work palette, would highly recommend this. I ended up just going with an all matte look. I reached for these 3 shades in the middle to create the look. Super quick, super easy. Highly recommend the Baked Browns palette from Dose of Colors. Another really easy palette for me to wear to work. Now this isn't my favorite palette ever, but I do really like the mattes in this. This is the Zoeva Cosmetics Cocoa Blend palette, and I just used these 2 shades as well as this shimmer shade to create the look that I created. What I will say about the Zoeva palette is I really only keep this palette around for these 3 shades at the bottom, and the shimmer is so-so. The shimmers in this palette I find to be pretty lackluster, but I really like the mattes, so that's why I keep this around. I like it for the mattes. Probably wouldn't buy another Zoeva palette just based on like my experience with this one, just because I think it's kind of subpar, unless the color story or something really spoke to me. Wasn't uberly impressed with the Zoeva Cosmetics eyeshadow formula. I know a lot of people really like it. I just seem to be like the black sheep on everything with my opinion on eyeshadow. Maybe I should take a lesson from everyone else. Maybe that's the reason my looks never look blended. For another unblended look to suit all your unblended look needs, I ended up doing a single shadow look, and I reached for, well, basically I used this in the crease. This is a Makeup Geek Creme Brulee, which I'm currently trying to pan, and then I went in with Pink Champagne from ABH all over the lid and created the look that you are currently seeing. I thought that I didn't like Pink Champagne because I thought it was lackluster, but when I used it this time around, I thought it was stunning and beautiful, so I was really happy that I reached for that and created the look that I did. Pink Champagne is one that I want to play around with more and just like pair it with other palettes and see what looks I can create, because I thought it was stunning and I remember not liking it in the past. So that was really nice to get to pull that and find another eyeshadow love in my collection that was just collecting dust. Okay, the Pure Visionary palette. I've talked about this on my channel before. I was so excited to buy this and it sat around forever and I just never reached for it because it is a very interesting sort of formula. I don't hate the look that I created. It was super easy, like neutral, sort of light look for work. I think I ended up just using a couple of shades. I believe I just went in with Role Model in the crease and then used Girl Boss all over the lid, which is just pretty shimmer, and I liked the look that I created. I didn't think it was like anything outstanding. I am going to keep this palette, keep it, it just keeps hanging around to see if I can create some looks. I mean, I feel like this is one that I could reach into for the like shimmers, but they're more like a satin shimmer. It's just a very interesting formula. I'm gonna keep this around for a little bit longer. I wanted to pull it again, see how I felt. I just still kind of feel like so about it, but we'll hang on to it for now. Milani Bold Obsessions. I don't love the look that I created with this, but I do love this palette. This was like a really quick one. Like I was trying to run out the door and I was already running late, and then my toddler decided she wanted me to drop her off for school that day, so like I really had to hurry. By the way, school is daycare in our household. We just call it school. Okay, so this is the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. I love this palette. The shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. For the look that I created, I used this shade in the crease like I always do. Use this deep brown shade to deepen it up, and then I wanted to like change things up, and I went with this all over the lid. It was fine. It's just like, I think because I didn't get to blend it that well because I was in such a rush, I didn't absolutely live for the look. But I know I love this palette. I would highly recommend this palette. This is another like great gem at the drugstore that I feel like is such an affordable cost for the quality. I believe these retail for $20 on the Milani website, but you can almost always find them for $15 at Walmart. So if you can get your hands on these, definitely recommend. I want to pick up their cool toned one, but again, I'm trying to like limit my palette purchases this year, so probably won't be doing that. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. This is one that I actually really do love. This is the Mini Star palette by Natasha Denona. This one's so easy for work, and I wore this one to work. I go in with this all over the crease, this to deepen up, and then I went in with this on my lid. It's so easy to create a look. This is such an easy one to travel with, and I really like the way that this look turned out. I've worn this many times to work, the same look. The one thing I will say about this palette is I did feel like the blue shimmer was a huge letdown and disappointment, very lackluster, but everything else about this palette I love, so was really excited to use that one. All right, you guys, we finally made it to the last 6 looks, the last 6 eyeshadow palettes, and these 6 were my top looks from the month. So first, the one that was mostly created with the Saharan palette by Juvia's with a little bit of the Saharan 2 mixed in. I love the way that this look came out, just a very warm bronzy sort of look. I used Katsina to start it out and like really blow that out in the crease, and then I used Jamelia to really warm up the crease, and then I reached into the 2 and I used this to really darken like the outer V. And then I went in with, I'm trying to like remember, and then I went in with, I don't even know how to pronounce this one, but then I went in with this all over the lid, and I absolutely love the way that this look turned out. This is one that I want to recreate and keep wearing throughout the summertime just because it is so beautiful in my opinion. Again, I absolutely love the way that this one turned out. Another one that I was surprised by but love the way that this turned out is from the Balm the Meet Match Maker palette. So this one I created, I'm not even kidding you guys, exclusively with this shade right here. So I used this with a really fluffy brush to blow out over the crease, and then I went in with like a more densely packed brush to deepen everything up, and I am obsessed with the way that this turned out. I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to reach into this palette more. This is one that I was like iffy on in the beginning, but I have loved every look that I've created with this palette, and I'm so happy to have this in my collection. So really love the look that I was able to come up with this, and glad that I was able to get some use out of this palette in May. On vacation, I was pretty much exclusively wearing my Huda Smoky Obsessions palette. So the picture you're gonna see is actually one, not like of my eye look, but that I just took on vacation. I just loved this palette so much. This has quickly become my favorite Huda Obsessions palette. So if you're looking for a Huda Obsessions palette to try, I highly recommend the Smoky. This next one really surprised me, but I decided to reach into the Pure Festival palette, which I got in a BoxyCharm. I wasn't expecting to like this because in the past, the quality of the Pure palettes that I've gotten in my BoxyCharm have not been good, and I created a look very similar to the one that I created with the Juvia's Place. Sorry, I'm trying to find the picture here. Just a very warm, look. I ended up using Epic, Hidden Desert, and All Night, and then I went in with Good Vibes as well as Psychedelic on the lid, and I just love the look that I created with. In fact, I ended up pulling this into my most recent Shop My Stash because I want to recreate that look. I want to play around with this a little bit more. I think this is beautiful for the summertime if you're just looking for those like really rich, warm, brownie orangey sort of looks. So was surprised by this, but a good surprise. Another one that I was surprised by, and this is mostly like I was surprised I was able to create this look. I saw a look on Pinterest and I was like, oh, I want to try and like recreate that. It was created with my Huda Coral Obsessions palette, and the look that I created makes me want to reach into this and create that look over and over and over again this summer. Now, I reached for the Coral Obsessions palette so often last summer, which is why I knew I wanted to bring this out and play with it for this challenge, because I hadn't reached for it since last summer, and boy am I glad I did. I have never created a look like this with this palette, but I love it. Like that pink vibe with that pop of yellow in the corner of my eyes. Absolutely living for it. So really excited to create some more looks with this guy this summer. And then this may have been my most favorite look that I created. It was with my Natasha Denona Lila palette, and this is one that like I really wasn't sure what I was even trying to create when I went in to this palette, but I just love what I ended up creating. And I knew that I wanted to use this duochrome shade, and this is why I feel like the look turned out to be my favorite, because I just love this shade so much. And it probably won't even like, it looks like a red shade right here, but it's like this beautiful duochrome like red green shade that just looks so interesting on the eyes. It looks nothing in the picture, it looks nothing like this swatch that I'm showing you, but I want to recreate this look over and over and over again because I was just obsessed with it. I felt like I kept walking by like the mirror the day that I wore this look, and I was like, you're looking good, girl. So that's my story about this. But after that, you guys, that should be 31 mini reviews on the 31 palettes that I used throughout the month of May. I'm thinking I will probably do this challenge at least one more time this year. I've just been trying to think of like interesting ways I can still play around with my palette collection while trying to pan the 19 shadows that I'm trying to pan in 2019. So this was really fun. I was more stressed out the last time that I did this, but I think being able to choose the palettes this time, and also choosing some of the palettes that I am already working on, and also being able to like mix palettes, made it a little bit less stressful. It was fun to take pictures of all the looks, so I hope you guys enjoyed that in this video. I know I did not do that the last time. I meant to, but I just didn't get around to doing that. I feel like this video is probably 8,000 years long, so I do apologize, and we'll wrap this up. Thanks so much if you stuck around to the end, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.